In the 21st century, equality has come to be a very crucial and important piece of our society. We are constantly fighting for equality, discussing and arguing and fighting over how equality should be lived out, how equality should take place in our society and through our governmental systems. And we often claim inequality as holding us back, as holding entire communities back, whether we be talking of racial inequality, gender inequality, inequality in the LGBTQ plus community, wage and economic inequality. No matter what form of inequality we're facing, we are convinced that if we can just achieve equality, then we can have unity. The Quaker testimony of equality has existed since the very beginning of Quakerism. Quakers believe that there is that of God in every man, that there's this light within each that can be awakened and burning and alive and give them that seed of faith and harmony with their soul and their spirit and their God. If every man and every woman and every person is truly equal and has this light inside of them, then equality is something that should be accepted and understood among all friends and all Quakers. There are many, many friends throughout the decades, throughout the centuries, who have lived out equality in very meaningful, impactful ways, not only in their personal lives, but in the way that they impacted the lives of people to come. Not just Quakers, but the entire world. Mary Fisher came in search of religious and gender equality long before America was even a nation. She was killed here. She gave her life in the belief that all people are created equal. Susan B. Anthony, years later, took her Quaker roots and her Quaker heritage and fought for the right for women to vote. Men like John Woolman fought for the rights of the poor and the African Americans who were enslaved and to be enslaved for many, many years later. During the height of the civil rights movement, Howard Reston, a homosexual man of color with Quaker heritage and Quaker roots, used his understanding of equality and fought alongside Martin Luther King Jr. and others as he sought to find a way to peacefully bring racial equality to the United States. Today, there are Quakers living all over the world, but even within the United States, who live daily this testimony that we are all equal. I have interviewed several friends who I've encountered in my personal walk in the light. They're friends from different walks of Quakerism, different walks of life, different backgrounds and different views, who understand the testimony of equality quite strongly in their own personal lives.
Hi, my name is Whitney Sluter, and I am a Quaker born and raised. I have attended Center Friends Meeting in Greensboro, North Carolina for my entire life. When my now husband and I started dating, we started attending Center together, and he is now the pastor at Center Friends. And so I've been around Quakers for a very long time.
My name is Timothy York, and my experience with friends is that I was brought up with the Quaker beliefs, and I was raised in a Quaker church my entire life.
Hi, my name is Brewer. I am a born and raised Quaker, and I grew up attending a Quaker meeting here in Greensboro, North Carolina. Older, I decided that I was going to work with a couple different Quaker ministries within my area, including Quaker Lake Camp and Friends Campus Ministry.
I definitely think of all of the weighty friends who I've come to know over my life. When I was in middle school, probably by far one of the most influential people to me as a Quaker would be Neil Thomas. Neil was my Sunday school teacher all 3 years when I was in middle school, and Neil taught us Quaker values, he taught us the spice, and he really showed us by example how he lived a Christian Quaker life. But I think probably by far the biggest testimony would be that I've been around people who have lived out Quaker testimony and Quaker truths just by how they live, and that I wanted to be like that as a child, as a teenager, certainly as an adult. Quaker values are very important to me. I hope that when Neil looks down on me from heaven, that he thinks about, when he's doing good, she's figuring it out. She's sharing the love of Christ through Quaker values with people in her community.
I'd say the roots of the Quaker testimony of equality would be from the scripture and from my parents, raising me by an example and give me instruction of how to, carry out that testimony.
Growing up, my parents made sure that they were instilling Quaker values within me, and I still carry those on in my day-to-day life now. Values when it comes to equality were learned by example from my family, and especially my parents. I had the privilege of growing up in a very unique time where equality is more prevalent in our society than ever.
I've been a teacher, I've been a curriculum facilitator, a curriculum coach working with other teachers, but now in my role as an educator, I'm a school administrator. And I think as a school administrator, you're faced with a lot of things. It's a lot. And it can be overwhelming at times, but I'm grateful every day that I am a Quaker, because I find that, especially in certain elements of Quakerism, the discernment piece, I do that daily when making decisions, whether they be instructional decisions or the least favorite part of my job, which is discipline. When I have to make a decision on discipline, when a student has, picked the wrong path, get them back on the right path, I spend a lot of time thinking. So I do see my Quaker values play out in my day-to-day job, in my career. Equality is very important to me.
I'd say I understand the testimony of equality in my personal life by, every day treating everyone with respect and understanding that they are equal to me in the Lord's eyes.
As I enter adulthood, I do know that it is important for me to carry my equality values no matter where I go, whether it is the grocery store or my workplace. Everyone deserves to feel loved and understood and accepted for exactly who they are.
We live in a very divisive world today in 2020. It's been a really hard year with COVID and just the overall political climate that we found ourselves, even if we have tried really hard not to be involved in that, the political war, you feel yourself drawn in either by people that you know and love talking about it or in social media. It's been all over the news for months. Even after the election, it's been all over the news. We have racial wars in this country. It's just, sometimes when you sit and think about it, it's just a lot. But I do think that equality absolutely has future in our world today, and certainly in the United States. I grew up in a law enforcement household. My dad was in law enforcement. My husband was in law enforcement. It's hard. It's a tough spot to be in. It's sometimes hard being an educator. I definitely feel that our world, our country, our community needs unity. I think to get to that place, though, we have to sit back. Every single one of us needs to sit down, spend some time in discernment, spend some time with God, and figure out the steps and the actions that we need to take together with that equality, with that unification as our end goal. We have very hurt people in our world and in our society, and I think that Quaker values overall could help us all come to that end goal of peace.
I would say that the future of the testimony is that it will be carried out by those who believe in the scripture and live by the
I
scripture.
do know that faith, no matter its form, makes this world a better place, and I am sure of one thing, that my Quaker roots will continue to help me grow throughout this life, and I hope to pass those on to every person that I meet, and my children and my grandchildren.
It's important to understand that the testimony of equality has changed over time. At the very beginning, while women were allowed to be equal in a spiritual sense, they were still kept from the meetings and had to hold their own business meetings and their separate meetings of leadership. While Quakers today hold fast and strong to their involvement in the Underground Railroad and the Civil Rights Movement and all of the equality bringing movements that have swept through our nation in times of crisis, there were many friends who owned slaves, and there were friends who struggled with gender equality and equality of all sexual orientations, and still struggle to this day. But what's important to understand is that a Quaker testimony is not a rule. It's not a law. A Quaker testimony means that someone who is following the light, living in the Quaker way, seeking out a friend's lifestyle, is going to understand that a testimony is something that they live as a testament of. They are a living testament of a belief that they hold. And friends are in all different walks. Will be in the streets at a pride march. Some friends won't marry a homosexual couple. They both will claim that they hold that testimony of equality. Some friends struggle with racial differences and don't know how to vote and how to stand up for the equality they believe in, while other friends will be marching in the street. It's important to understand that a Quaker testimony is not binding. A Quaker testimony is not a legal contract. A Quaker testimony means that each individual has the right, ability, and honor to be able to choose their own way and their own conscience, and to listen to the light within them and to seek that and understand what that means in their life and how they're going to live out equality. With the emergence of convergent Quakerism, friends today have a very special opportunity. Just as the friends who've come before that have brought social change, change in their personal lives, and change on a worldwide scale, we have the ability to come together and discern how we can unite behind our testimonies. Quaker testimony of equality is especially crucial in this time. Understanding that just as John Woolman, wandering from meeting to meeting, wandering through the wilderness of colonial America, crying out for the injustices against the poor and the African Americans to be righted, just as Bayard Rustin cried out to follow equality and peace, we today can come together in unity and realize that there are new ways to live out our testimony. There are new ways to show others how much we truly believe in the light within every man. Equality is important. No one will deny it. Equality as a testimony is hard. It is hard to live out on a daily personal level, just as hard as peace or simplicity, just as hard as any other testimony any friend or follower of Christ has ever attempted. But equality is important, and equality is needed, and Quakers have the ability to make a change, no matter how small and no matter how big the repercussions of those changes. They have the chance to come together and live out their testimonies in a very real way.